Jim Carrey often talks about how, as a child, he learned how to become what people wanted. He learned to be funny. He learned to be entertaining. He learned to be impressive. And for him, it was a way of not just survival, but as a way of keeping his family together. And so if you think about that, he became the Jim Carrey we know from the big screen, but he became it in real life earlier on to get by. And I think to one degree or another, we all do this. We become what we want other people to think we are. And the problem with that is there is a desire in us to be known and loved for who we are. And so the thicker of a mask we have on, the further we actually keep people from knowing the true us, who we want them to know and to love and to accept. And so what happens is we get on this treadmill. We all do this. We get on this treadmill, this hamster wheel thing that we can't get off of, and it's exhausting. And the thing is we never get to the destination we're wanting to be at. There's no arriving. There's actually only pushing people further away, and you could say we're like backwards hustling. We're hustling backwards. So here's the question. If you build your life on being what others want, who are you when they stop watching? The desire that we all share is the desire that we all share is to matter, to count for something, to belong, to be wanted, to be needed, to be loved for just who we are. And that's why we do things like post on social media for that little thumb or the little heart. We want those likes. But guess what? No matter how many likes we get at the end of the night, the next day, we need more likes. And we didn't get enough. It never satisfies. The only thing that satisfies is to be known and loved for who we are. When we have that at a baseline for our existence, we start to walk in who God created us to be. And we can't be knocked off of our path. Some people look to others for approval. Some people look to success. Some people look to pleasure. But there is nothing in this world that can ever fix what's going on deep inside. That's why Jim Carrey said, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. And that's coming from a guy who has had it and probably still has it all. Fame, riches, he could travel anywhere he wants, he probably got houses everywhere he wants. And he's saying, it's not the answer. There's something else going on. And so the answer is not to look deeper inside. Sometimes we're told that, sometimes we think that. The answer is obviously not to look outward. The answer is to look up at the one who made us, the one who knows us better than we know ourselves, and says he absolutely adores us and loves us and is pleased with us. That's the only answer. When we look at Jesus' life, we see a man who had a confidence and an assurance like no other human being that's ever walked this earth. In the face of hardships, in the face of persecution and insult, manipulation, nothing could get Jesus to stop being who Jesus was. He wouldn't put on the mask for anybody. Funny, I didn't even think about that as I was preaching. You guys remember The Mask, Jim Carrey? Yeah. Oh, we're going to preach this next week too. We're going to come back. No, I'm just joking. But Jesus was rock solid in who he was. But we can all be rock solid like that. And I'm going to give you right now the silver bullet. The silver bullet for life. I usually don't do that. I usually don't make that offer. It's a big, that's a lofty claim that there is a silver bullet. There's a silver bullet, y'all. All right, here it is. It's in John 8:29. Make this, burn this, sear this into your conscience. Jesus said this to a mixed audience. Some people wanted to kill him. Some people wanted to make him the king. Some people didn't really know what they wanted. They were on the fence. And Jesus is looking at all of them, and he says this, "The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone because I always do what pleases him." He, him, that's God the Father. That's God the Father. So Jesus had an assurance and a confidence because of his obedience. His assurance was tied to his obedience to God the Father. So every word in the Bible is important. So there's a word here that's really important, but it could be misleading. And I'm really just wanting to focus in on this word "because" here in the middle of this. It says, "The one who sent me has not left me alone because I always do what pleases him." Because I always do what pleases him. Now, I could package this sermon up with go out, obey God, and you'll have assurance that he is with you. And I will just give you a whole new hamster wheel to get on. Even just that is a hamster wheel. If you take it, see, yes, Jesus was obedient and therefore pleased God the Father. But if you'll remember, before Jesus ever said these words, before Jesus ever allowed them to nail him to the cross, God the Father was already pleased with him. He said at his baptism, he spoke so that everybody that was around could hear it from heaven. God the Father says, "This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." I'm already pleased with him. So Jesus already knows that God is pleased with him, and he is obeying him, God the Father, which pleases him, but he's doing it in the context of already having been pleasing to the Father. So there's obedience, yes, but it's like the chicken and the egg thing. Which comes first? It doesn't matter. It's both. You can't have one without the other. Love and obedience are two sides of the same coin. If you want to be in a loving relationship with God the Father, then you're going to obey, or Jesus, God, then you're going to obey him. And that's how you can know if you're a Christian. Are you walking in ways that would be pleasing to God, that he has revealed to us? If you are, well, that means that you're in this loving relationship with him. Jesus has invited us into it. God the Father and God the Son are in this dynamic, obedient, loving relation. You see it in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus is like, God the Father. He's like, Father, he's taking on the weight of the sins of the world and the guilt, and it's all coming down on him, and the pressure is so much that he's literally bleeding out of his pores. His sweat glands are producing blood somehow, okay? That's how much pressure he's facing. And he says, Father, I don't want this. If there's any other way, let it be. And he ends the prayer with those famous words, "But not my will, yours be done." He's obedient. That's part of love. And the outflow of a loving obedience is assurance and confidence. The one who sent me is with me because I always do what pleases him. I always do what pleases him because he is with me. And Jesus invited his disciples, which by extension is us. He says, "Who is it that loves me? Those who obey my words." So now Jesus is inviting us into this dynamic, true, loving experience with God where we now obey out of love. the author of Ecclesiastes, pitched this to us from the Old Testament. He said, what is it that at the end of a life, he was like Jim Carrey, what had it all, but times 100 million, the richest man on the planet. He said, what is it after everything's said and done? I've lived a life, I've spent myself on pleasure, on everything. He says, know God and obey his commands. That's it. That's what the meaning of life is. And then the New City Catechism, which is kind of a compilation of all the old catechisms. If you don't know about the New City Catechism, it's really good to look into. There's a lot of great resources attached to it. But it says, what is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. It's all just saying the same thing. Have a loving and obedient relationship with God. But how do we do it? Because how do we not jump on another hamster wheel? Like, what's a practical way? Well, here's my takeaway key point is, if you want the assurance of knowing God is with you, pledge to live for the audience of one. Pledge to live for the audience of one. I didn't create that phrase. I read it long ago. But that is literally the silver bullet. That's the silver bullet of not being two-faced or three-faced or 50-faced, depending on who's in front of you. And then losing yourself. Okay, so how do we live for the audience one? Over and over, we see Jesus prioritizing his relationship with God the Father over every other relationship. He prioritized it over the crowds who wanted to make him king. You'll remember they're like, come on, we got to make Jesus king. And he just slips out and he goes off and he goes to pray with God. And he prioritizes it over what the crowds wanted for him. And then he prioritized it over his own blood family. They came looking for him. Jesus, this is madness. You need to come home. You need to come back to us. He's like, no, I can't do that. I got spiritual things to do. And he said, I'm not coming home with you. And then he prioritized it over his spiritual family, the disciples, slipping away to pray with God the Father over and over. And when they tried to say, Jesus, usher in the Messianic kingdom, he's like, nope, I got my Father's will to do. I got to go die first. They couldn't even comprehend that. He prioritized that Jesus truly lived for an audience of one. And as a result, was rock solid. Rock solid.